Welcome to How to Find More Direct Clients Than You Can Poke a Stick At podcast, a mix of both solo episodes and expert interviews. Our ideal listener is an early career, ambitious, and passionate online language services provider. She is committed to professional growth and achieving success in the fiercely competitive translation and interpreting industry. She balances multiple responsibilities with resourcefulness, values mentorship, is open to learning, and investing in her professional development journey. She embraces technology and seeks to optimize workflow, eager to connect with like-minded peers and build out her professional network. She is determined to overcome challenges and become a sought-after freelance translator. And here's your host, medical translator and translator business mentor, Jason Willis Lee.
And welcome to another edition of How to Find More Direct Clients, the podcast that makes digital marketer both easier and more enjoyable by blending smarter, not harder business strategies with just the right dose of tech. I'm your host, Jason Willis Lee, digital marketing specialist, and today I'm very excited to introduce my special guest. Her name is Emily Aborn, and she is a content copywriter. Emily, thank you so much for joining me on the show. How are you today?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm so glad we could finally make this work out.
We did have a couple of problems with the time. Yeah, we're 6 hours apart, so this is no mean feat to getting on the screen at the same time. Emily, can you just start by sharing a bit about your journey, your business journey, and your unique vision for where the content copywriting sector is headed in the generative AI era?
Yes, the generative AI era. Okay, I'll give you the real quick version. So I actually went to school for like health education and nutrition and things like that with the goal of becoming kind of like a health educator and working in offices and educating people in that way. And I did end up working in a lot of those kind of roles like throughout my career, I'll say, my short-lived career. But in every single one of those, I almost always ended up sitting in like the marketing seat. So I would be the one like writing the emails or like creating the marketing materials or advertising the workshops or doing all of those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
I did some health education, but what I realized slowly over time is that I really had that passion to like take messages and get them into a concise way where other people felt like it was speaking right to them. And then they then became involved in those messages. They then became connected to those messages. So I even went so far in the like health thing. Like I think it was like my last ditch effort to say like, I have to use this degree for something. My husband and I actually ended up opening a retail shop. And we sold like non-toxic bedding and sleep products, which in Spain, that's probably the norm. In America, we like to put chemicals in things. So
Yeah.
these were alternatives to like chemical the items that don't off gas, basically. So I did that for 5 years. And then I realized one day, like, I don't like this. I don't want to be in a retail shop. I don't like this piece of like, I don't think health education is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
So again, in looking at everything I did love in that entrepreneur experience, I mean, I am an entrepreneur like through and through to my core from when I was a little kid. So I always knew I didn't want to work for somebody else. But when I looked at everything I really did love doing in my business and what I was really, really good at, it was all of like the copy and the marketing and those kind of things. So it was a big pivot. I mean, that was 6.5 years ago now, but that was a pretty big like pivot for us. And it was scary. Like opening the store for some reason, it was a very large investment, but it was not nearly as scary as what I decided to do. I think because I was so close to like my true north, you know?
Right.
So anyway, I made that change and here I am 6.5 years later, learning all the time and absolutely loving what I do. When it comes to AI, that is definitely, I would say last year, it really concerned me because I was seeing like, oh, this is actually going to replace me. But I'm seeing a lot more power in being able to use those tools well, because I don't think, and maybe this will change someday, but I still don't think that other humans want robots to be kind of like doing all of the copy, Like they don't, when you read something that's written by AI, it doesn't usually have the same an emotional connection. So, as of now, it's really for copywriters and writers. I think about being able to use those tools in ideation and generation and helping you to refine your ideas, but not letting it do the work for you. It's kind of like my assistant, right? Or like my sidekick, not something I would offload a task to, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. Emily, what is curiosity marketing? You talk about curiosity marketing in your profile. Can you explain to us, to our listeners, what that is?
Yeah. So curiosity marketing is something I just kind of stumbled upon because I was curious and I followed that thread. So it's really about using our content and our copy to create a gap between what people know and what they want to know.
Okay.
So what I'm doing is I'm kind of opening up a door to get them interested, to spark your interest. Think about like a book that you might read or a movie that you might watch. Like the thing that keeps you strung along is that you don't entirely know what's going to happen next, right? Like what causes you to, and it connects with you in some way, I would say is another element of it. But just opening up that door with our copy and our content to saying like, let's go on this journey together, right? So the way to kind of like, there are a lot of tips and tricks around that, but one really easy one that everybody could start using is when you're sharing a post or content or podcast or blog, you want to not close the loop, meaning you want to not tell people like being prescriptive in what you offer. So I don't want to like tell somebody what to do and how to do it. I want to give them options and ideas and then like kind of invite them to take that for themselves, right?
Mm.
So actually a therapist I'm writing for right now, she told me yesterday after the first session, she'll give people a list of like 70 different ideas that they can do. And then next time she works with them to refine that list a little bit. And next time she works with them to refine it even more. But I like that. It's kind of like showing everybody their options, but not telling them like, you need to try this, you know? And there are certain tones of voice and certain brands that come across more sorry, that's a hard word. Prescriptive
Prescriptive,
to
yeah.
others. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can fall into that of like the voice of authority, right? Like telling
Mm.
somebody how they should do it and what they should do. And I'm not talking about like not giving them the steps. I'm just saying like keeping the loops open. And another great way to do that is just like asking questions. So like a podcast host gets a really unique opportunity, I think, because you get to open that curiosity loop for your listeners every
Hmm.
single time you ask a question. So when you ask a question, the listener is also kind of their mind is also asking that question. And then they might come up with their own answer before I do or before the guest does, you know? So
Right.
I think it's things like that, like inviting people in with asking them a question. There's so much more, but I'm gonna pause there.
Yeah, so we are talking, thank you for that. We are talking to an audience of online language service providers, so translators, interpreters, copywriters, maybe a graphic designer or two, who knows? So some of my clients or my audience haven't even started a content. They're beginners. They don't have or haven't had the confidence to post online. And yeah, it takes a while before you get to that point where you can post every day and not really care what people are thinking about you. It took me a long time before I felt, comfortable and got rid of that imposter syndrome, which is still there, obviously. So could you share with our audience, please, a couple of ways outside of social media that we can market us? So I'm including website in that as well. So let's not talk about website. Let's not talk about, Instagram, TikTok, etc., all those platforms. How can we market ourselves outside of social media?
Yeah, let's talk about getting offline because we all need to do a little bit more of that. So,
Sure.
I mean, right now we're online, okay, but I'm going to use this as a great example. This is like first and foremost where I start with almost any out of the box marketing I'm giving as a solution or idea. And it is collaborating with other people. So,
Right.
when you're running a business, it can get really lonely. You can get stuck in your head, trapped in what you're doing, and kind of like maybe scared to post or to show
Yeah.
up, right?
Yeah.
So, doing collaborations with other people in the nature of speaking or podcast hosting and guesting, or creating an event together with somebody locally that would attract kind of either your ideal client or people that interact with your ideal client. Those are all kind of like mini ways to collaborate with other people. And then you bring both of your skills and talents together to create something new. And it goes further faster. So you're thinking like, okay, now we're taking both of our what we both have and we're multiplying it times however many, however many the other person has capacity to multiply it by. So collaboration is number one. Like I can't that is the hill I will die on. Number two,
So
I would
you're
say
referring to a typical joint venture to leverage another person's audience, right? A typical
yeah, like
JV, yeah.
I don't love the term joint venture only because I think that it almost always, for some people, it almost always implies like that there's some monetary
Mm,
component, which it
mm.
doesn't necessarily even need to be. Like what you and I are
Sure,
doing right now, this is not a monetary exchange.
correct.
I'm giving, you're giving, or it's both just coming to the table, bringing
Yeah,
something. I would
yeah.
say that. Okay. And then the other one is like connecting with other people. So this can look different for you depending on your personality. Some people love to go to those big networking events and like connect with other people in groups and formalized settings. And that can be really, really comfortable for certain people. Other people just want that like one-to-one coffee chat or one-to-one coffee connect. And the other thing is just like letting people know what you're doing, like letting everybody in your life know what you're doing, even if you don't think that they're going to be an ideal client, even if that you don't think that they know your ideal client, right? Like you want everybody to know who you are and what you're doing because you never know when it's going to come up for somebody that they're standing next to somebody in the grocery store that says something that the person you have told can now inform them of. So that's where I'll start is collaboration and connection since we're kind of keeping things on the offline focus.
Okay. What are some ways we can repurpose content? So let's say we do a blog post. How can we sort of roll that into a lot of different formats? Maybe a video, maybe a reel, maybe something. How can we sort of leverage one piece of content for multiple channels or that will keep us going for a week? Maybe one piece of content can keep us going several days, maybe not a week. But how can we repurpose? Do you have any repurposing strategies to share with our audience?
Yeah, my first repurposing strategy is always do it. For a lot of people running their own business, creating content can become a whole entire second job, and I don't want that for you. I don't want that for myself. It can get very draining trying to think of new things to
Yeah,
share and post all of the time, and that's just not the best and highest use of your time, energy, or brain power.
sure.
So, when you're creating anything like the let's use this podcast as a case in point. So this is a longer-ish podcast, right? 35 to 40 minutes, something
Yep.
like that. You are able to go through like especially the way you've structured your questions because they're kind of topical. So you would be able to go through and pull out a section that was related to each of these topics. You could use it as a social post. You could use it as a whole blog article. You could use it as an email that you're going to use as a tie in for this episode. Like, I just like to think of whatever I'm creating that's long form, breaking it down into different ways. And I find that with most long form, whether it be a podcast, blog, email, I think that's pretty much the a LinkedIn article.
Hmm.
You're able to kind of parse out, like, okay, let's break this out actually into smaller bite sized pieces. And the benefit to you is really that, like, your clients and customers are engaging with content in all different ways. Some people love audio. Some people love video. Some people love long text. Some people love short, quippy things. So you're giving them kind of different opportunities to engage with your content. If you're conversely, if you're always creating long, huge blog articles and that's all you ever create, right? There are a good amount of people that are not ever going to read that and not ever going to hear all of those fantastic things that you had to say. So, what if you take that long blog article and you turn it into a podcast episode? What if you take that podcast episode and turn it into a blog article, right? So I just love, I like to define repurposing is not always, usually, it's not usually cut and paste. It's not just like, okay, I posted here, now I'm going to post here, now I'm going to post here, the exact same thing. It's really taking something old or existing and using it in a new way. So I just want to clarify that because I think some people are like, I do repurpose, I copy and paste. And I'm like, that is great. And it's not repurposing. That's called cross posting.
Mm-hmm. What are some things to avoid in our content, Emily? How can we, a couple of mistakes to maybe avoid tripping us up? Can you save us from those mistakes?
Sure. I think a good place to start, because there's a lot that, there's so much to learn as you go in creating content and you learn about yourself. And I think you learn about your clients. But I think a really good place to start is just like know who you are as a business owner, meaning what you stand for, what you offer, who you work with. But equally as important, know about the person on the other side and speak to them like it is just one person on the other side. Like if I could go back and do it all again, I would have taken out the whole concept of like an audience, right? Or like a community or like a
Mm-hmm.
listenership and just been like, I'm just going to focus on Sally today or Christy today or Thomas today. I'm just going to have their name in my mind and speak to them, speak in this whole thing like it's just one individual. Because on the other side of the screen, no matter what we're creating, it's always just one person,
Mm.
right? So, yes, we want to cover everything and make sure everyone feels all the things, but you really want to, the more specific you are in speaking to that one person, I think the more that it lands.
What about some must-haves to add into the content for engagement? Because what we want is for people to interact and engage, right? We want, when I put up a LinkedIn post, I want 20, 30 likes straight away. What are some elements that have to be, do we have to have a call to action in every single piece of content, or what are some things to add in?
If there was only a secret sauce, I think that the real answer is to be yourself and
Mm-hmm.
and and really let your personality, like we don't need to button up every single okay, it depends on who you are, right? Some people are very buttoned up and professional and that is how they come across.
Serious.
um
Yeah.
it yeah, people know me. Like if I were to show up really really serious in all of my content and then you met me, you'd be like, this doesn't make sense, right? And it's also wouldn't be very engaging because I wouldn't be genuine when I was creating it.
Mm.
So I really think like one of the most important things to do to be engaging is to practice being yourself. And like so for some people it's easier said than done. For some people it's like no brainer. I can do that, right? But I do think that being yourself, and then like I think there's other, don't get sucked into like what everybody else is doing, like the trends and there's so many people that use like that unpopular opinion. I'm like, it's not really that unpopular of an opinion. There's just a lot of trends going around. And so if you get caught up into those, you're just kind of going to be blowing in the wind. So I think like being really sure on like who you are, like I said, what you
Mm.
do, how you help, and who you serve, and just keep on like anchoring yourself in that. Raising questions is another really, really good one. And then just keeping your eye out on like what is the attention span of my reader or listener in this container. So if I'm on LinkedIn, I probably am not going to want to create something that's super super long and lengthy, right? Unless the I know the attention span of the person on the other side is that. So it's really keeping in mind like the container you're using and whether or not it kind of like meets that. It's not a simple answer, unfortunately. Like
Mm.
if we all knew how to create amazing the things that sometimes go quote unquote viral, it's like I never would have seen that coming. So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
such a good point. I mean, I'm quite a serious person, I think, at work, and I try and get my personality across into my branding. For example, I like Star Wars, I like Back to the Future, I like Indiana Jones. So I try and get these snippets into my emails and my webinars, so it's very clear that's what I like, right? Pat Flynn, for example, we all know he loves Back to the Future. We know this because he tells us a lot, and he has in his office, he has this sort of backdrop. He has a DeLorean here and there, so that's personal branding. Um, what are you reading right now, Emily? What book are you reading, or what was the last book you read? If you're not reading one at the moment.
Yeah, I think I should tell you what I just finished last night because I didn't ever want it to end. It was called The Personal Librarian, and it is the story of the the JP Morgan Library. That's not the actual name of it, but
Mm-hmm.
and the woman who was the art curator at that time, she was actually an African American, but she had to hide her identity because of racism at the time.
Oh,
And so she actually kind of pretended that she was Portuguese, I think is what she pretended she was. So she changed her last name and nobody ever knew her identity. And she became like this absolutely fantastic and pivotal part of that library and museum to this day. So it was like her story, and I fell in love with everybody, and I didn't want it to end, and it ended.
who's the author? I'm sorry, did you say the author?
Yeah, there are actually two, and you're gonna have to give me a second on this because
Sure.
I don't like to say facts incorrectly. Okay, it is Marie Benedict and Victoria Christopher Murphy. They actually
Okay.
co-authored it. And one of them was like, I don't know if I really want to do this. And then once they connected and chatted, she was all in. And that's kind of how I felt in the beginning of the book. I was like, I don't know if I want to read this. And then I kept going and I was just like sold.
We'll definitely get a link out to that. What's the biggest myth? I like to do myth busting and challenge some people's views. It's good to have a polarizing opinion sometimes because that stands out, right? If everyone are thinking one thing and you think another, or we think another, what is the biggest myth when it comes to copywriting, content copywriting, your activity?
I think I'll use around my profession. How's that?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, sometimes I think people don't actually even know what a copywriter is. I've had people tell me they think I'm the person that puts like that little letter C at the bottom of your website. Like they think I have something to do with like law and trademarks and things. I'm like, no. So a
Right.
copywriter, just to like very clearly define it, it is the person who writes the words on a website or
Sure.
in marketing materials. Okay. I think the biggest myth is that people, and I think some people can, but I think that a lot of people think because they're a good writer, they should be a good like website writer. Like, oh, I can write my website because I'm a good writer. And what I like to help people understand is like, I was a very good writer in school, but I did not know how to write sales copy. They didn't teach me how to sell things in school. They didn't teach me psychological principles in school and where the eye lingers on a website and how it's laid out. Like, that's not stuff anyone really would know unless that's their area of expertise. So, I do want to say, I think that hiring a copywriter will make you can do it yourself at first. Like, we all have to bootstrap it a little bit, but I do think it will elevate that to the next level, and they're really trained at like helping to connect with the person on the other side and know very very deeply who that is. So just something to consider. And also, I guess if you aren't if you feel like you're not a good writer, one of the like best ways to get better and better and better at it is to write.
Mm,
Read and
sure.
write. And so I hear people say that a lot too, like, oh, I'm just not a good writer. And how do I get better at it? And I like, well, read for one thing and write. That is the one and only way to get better at writing.
Yeah, do it every day, like the reps of the gym every day. I agree.
Mhm.
In one word, how would you describe copywriting? Just one word. What's the first word that pops into your mind?
Fun.
Okay, that's great. That's good. Yeah. Um, what about a sales page? So all my audience, the audience I serve are service providers in the main, in language provision, so translators, interpreters, copywriters. How should that sales page flow for a service? We don't want too much copy, sometimes less is more. What are the sort of things that should tease clients, instigate them to ask for more information without giving away the whole story in one go?
So I want to be very clear that I'm not a sales copywriter. I actually
Okay.
don't love doing sales pages. I know the basics that you want, like a nice inviting headline and tagline that gives them a clear promise of transformation. You're going to toss in some pepper and some pain points and frustrations in there and make them feel seen and heard, and then you're going to boom, give them a solution. But that's about all. I've done sales pages for myself. I would recommend hiring somebody specific in sales copy,
Yeah.
because there's a particular cadence that it's going to go through that you will want to adhere to, because it's really important to know your customer in that setting.
A famous copywriter just popped into my mind, Ogilvy, the advertising agency Ogilvy, which I think was New York, which is not too far from where you are now. You're in Massachusetts, so there, sorry, New Hampshire, New England. How do you think copywriting has changed from the times of Ogilvy? So this is what, mid 20th century, mid to later 20th century to now. Obviously, AI has changed the landscape completely. But essentially the craft is the same, right? Do you think there are many other differences?
Yeah, I think there's two kind of key differences. One is that I think people are getting savvier and savvier about when they're being sold to. And if you are on some version of social media, the things that are selling to you, you almost always like, you're like, okay, skip that, right? So we are becoming more attuned to when we're being sold to, which I think just as business owners, it means we have to become savvier at how we're connecting. And it doesn't always need to be a sales pitch. It does not always need to be you promoting yourself. I think your reputation and the connection that you make with other people goes a long, long way. Like, I don't like selling myself personally. Like, it is not my favorite thing to do, to be like, here's the pitch. So
Mm,
this is easier for me, but I think a lot of people love pitching themselves. Like, that is what they do in a lot of their stuff. And just important to remember, it's not always the chosen way nowadays, because people are getting more attuned that they're being sold to. And then I think secondly, I think that we've become more, we want like more authenticity
mm,
as consumers, and we want to really like connect with the things that we're buying, even whether it is a big brand like Apple, or it is a little solopreneur working in her office in New Hampshire. We want to connect emotionally with the person that we're purchasing from. So I think as in the copywriting world, that's actually like enjoyable for me, because I get to use people's personality and the things that make them unique, and the things like those Star Wars and the the DeLorean, which I know nothing about, right? But I get to use those things to make those connections. And it does end up being more conversational, I'd say. So those are the two I can think of. I mean, I probably could think of more, but I think those are a good starting place.
yeah, another series I really liked was Knight Rider. So I put pictures of the Knight 2000. Yeah, it's just a quirky thing to get this, branding across. But yeah, I find I think a lot of us find selling difficult. My trick to do it on webinars whenever I launch a product or something I'm selling is just to ask permission. So I finish my
Mm-hmm.
value part of the webinar, which is the main thing, and when I get to the pitch, I say, "Would it be okay if I told you where you could get further information?" You know what? I've yet to find one person who's written no in the chat. Nobody has written no. Everyone says yes. Maybe they don't buy. Maybe not everyone buys, but they certainly give you permission. And that's the way to sell ethically, I think. And as long as it's ethical and not sleazy and snake oil type selling, you have to have something of value. And I think consumers are wise enough to decide what is of value and what isn't. Emily, what's the best investment you ever made? Best business investment, or maybe personal investment? Let's do business investment. Keep it to
Okay, I
business.
think the best business investment I made was actually recently. I invested in a SEO course, and it was very in depth and very immersive. It was 9 months long, and
Mm-hmm.
for that 9 months, we were writing. I think we were doing 4 blogs a month, so it was like a pretty quick pace.
Yeah.
And I learned so much about SEO, and it was amazing. Now, have I applied that to my own copy? No,
Okay.
but I am able to use it for my clients a lot.
What's your favorite SEO tool? Just following on from that, what do you use? Do you like SEMrush, Google Keyword Planner?
Funny you should ask that. I like Uber Suggest only because
Mm,
and I'm saying this for myself because I like the interface of it, but I also think that for a lot of people, kind of depending on your brain, but it tends to be like very easy to understand and
yeah,
intuitive.
yeah.
SEMrush is great, but I can see how a person would get into it and be like, wow, this is overwhelming, and it's kind of harder for them to navigate. So, and Uber Suggest has like a really affordable price point. I think they even have a free version you can start with.
Can you give us a price point that for our audience that is about? This is Neil Patel, right? Uber Suggest is Neil Patel.
Yes, you are 100% right.
What
I
would a price point be there?
I got a sneaky deal.
Okay.
I got $99 for a lifetime
Wow,
subscription.
that's
Yeah, it was
good.
a
Yeah.
really good deal. So, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what the pricing actually is monthly. I'm
Mm,
so
okay.
sorry.
I'm sure there are multiple price points. Just one more question. What's a quick fire question? What's the best business advice you've received for your business?
The best business advice I received is get out there and meet people. And
Right.
it was honestly life changing for me.
That's certainly good advice. Emily, any final thoughts or a key takeaway for everything we've discussed? Any one thing, one notable nugget you want our audience to take away from this episode?
No, I think this was really thorough and you asked great questions. And I think if we had one takeaway, it would just really be how important it is to be yourself wherever you're showing up.
Be authentic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where can listeners connect with you, Emily? Learn more about your work. Is it website, LinkedIn? What platform is good?
Yeah, I think website is best because if you go to my website, you can find wherever you like to spend your time. So, emilyaborn.com, and then you can connect with me there in all of the other places.
Yourname.com. Great. We'll get a link to that in the show notes. All right, let's wrap it up for today's episode of How to Find More Direct Clients. Do stay tuned for more engaging discussions on the ever evolving landscape of language and digital marketing. Until then, stay on your game and remember to future proof your career in the generative AI era. Bye for now. And thank you very much again to Emily, my special guest.
Here's a fun fact about Jason. Jason loves reading John Grisham thrillers in his spare time. Thanks for tuning in to the How to Find More Direct Clients Than You Can Poke a Stick At podcast. We'll be back soon. In the meantime, why not head over to www.entrepreneurialtranslator.com to access all our tools and resources to monetize and future-proof your freelance translation business. And don't forget to hit the plus button in Apple Podcasts or iTunes, or subscribe in Spotify to be notified when new episodes drop. For regular tips and insights, business strategy, or marketing techniques straight to your inbox, please sign up at www.entrepreneurialtranslator.com.